I'm Emily, and if you're hearing this, you're probably expecting the story of a rich girl living in a golden cage with everything money can buy and nothing real to hold on to. And you wouldn't be wrong. My father is a self-made millionaire, a powerful man who built his empire brick by brick, deal by deal, handshake by handshake. He's respected in the business world, feared by his competitors, and admired by anyone who only knows him from the headlines. To the world, he's larger than life. But to me, he's just my dad. Or at least he was. Because for years, something was missing in our house. A void that no amount of money could fill. See, my mother died when I was only 7 years old, and when she left, she took the light of our home with her. She was gentle, soft-spoken, but strong in ways I didn't understand until much later. She was the glue that kept everything together, the warmth in every cold morning, the smile after every long day. And then she was gone. I still remember the way the silence settled into our mansion after her funeral. A house so big it could echo your footsteps, felt like an empty cave. Dad threw himself into work, I threw myself into school and books, and between us was an invisible wall, built from grief and unfinished words. But there was one person who held me together. Her name was Grace. Grace wasn't family, not by blood, anyway. She was our housekeeper. She'd been with us even before I was born. A tall black woman with warm eyes, a soothing voice, and a laugh that could break through any storm cloud. When my mother passed, Grace became, well, everything. She woke me up for school, brushed the tangles out of my hair, cooked me warm meals when my dad was too busy. She listened when I cried, held me when I couldn't stop, and reminded me to smile even when the days felt impossible. Grace wasn't perfect. She'd get tired, her hands rough from cleaning, her back sore from bending over too long, but she never once let me feel unloved. In many ways, she was the only real mother I had left. But of course, she wasn't officially my mother. She was just the help. At least, that's how Dad's colleagues and guests always saw her. Some of them didn't even look at her when they walked past. They'd toss their coats at her, demand things with clipped words, and act like she was invisible. But not to me. To me, she was my anchor. Years passed. I grew older, and so did my dad. His hair streaked with gray, his face lined with years of stress and hard work. And though he never said it out loud, I knew he was lonely. He'd come home from business trips to an empty table. He'd stare at my mother's portrait in the hallway, glass of whiskey in his hand, lost in thought. He still wore his wedding ring. Until one evening, he surprised me. It was late. I had just come home from college for a break, and we were sitting at the dinner table, just him and me. Grace had made her famous roast chicken, the kind that filled the entire house with comfort. Dad cleared his throat. "Emily," he said, "I've been thinking. You're a young woman now, old enough to understand things better, and there's something I need to ask of you." I looked up from my plate. "What is it, Dad?" He leaned back in his chair, adjusting his cufflinks the way he always did when he was nervous. His voice softened, but his eyes were sharp, searching mine. "I want to remarry." The fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard him right. "You what?" "I want to remarry," he repeated, more firmly this time. "I've lived alone for too long. I miss companionship. I miss having someone by my side. And I think it's time." My heart thudded. My mind raced. After all these years, after clinging to Mom's memory like a lifeline. But why are you telling me this? And then came the twist that turned my world upside down. Because, he said slowly, I want you to help me choose. I blinked. Choose? Yes, I've narrowed it down to 5 potential women. They're all respectable, intelligent, wealthy in their own right, women who could fit into our world. But Emily, this isn't just about me. Whoever I marry will also become your stepmother, so I need your blessing. I need you to choose who she'll be. I froze in my seat. 5 women. My father was asking me to pick my own new mother like it was some interview process, a decision that would change both our lives forever. And in that moment, I felt the weight of something I didn't want but couldn't avoid. The choice of who would fill the shoes no one else could ever truly replace. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying his words again and again. How could I choose? How could anyone? And deep down, another thought haunted me. Why did it have to be one of those 5 women? Why not someone else? Because as much as I tried to imagine strangers in my mother's place, the only face that came to mind was Grace. The very next morning, I woke to the sound of my father's voice echoing down the grand hallway. He was on the phone, pacing back and forth in his study, his tone firm but polite. I lingered by the door, listening. Yes, Saturday night, at our home. Bring your best self. Emily will be there. When he hung up, I stepped inside. Dad, are you inviting them all here? He nodded. Of course. Where else would I see if they belong in this house? In our lives. Our lives. I swallowed hard. He made it sound so simple. By Saturday, the mansion was polished like a palace. Grace had worked herself to the bone, making sure every corner gleamed. Though she moved with a quiet heaviness in her steps, I wondered if she knew what the evening was about. That night, I put on a dress my father had chosen for me, a soft blue satin with pearls around the neckline. I didn't feel like myself in it. I felt like a prop. And then, the parade began. The first woman, Victoria. The doorbell rang. When I opened it, a tall blonde woman in diamonds swept in like she owned the place. Her perfume hit me before her smile did. Emily, she exclaimed, as though we were lifelong friends. She handed me a silver box wrapped in a bow. Inside was a necklace, platinum, shimmering. Just a little something for my future daughter, she said with a wink. I forced a polite smile, but inside I recoiled. Future daughter? She didn't even know me. At dinner, Victoria dominated the conversation. She talked about her vacations in Monaco, her art collection, her charity galas, but when Dad asked her thoughts on family, she said, "Oh, darling, I believe children should be raised by the best schools money can buy. It frees up the parents for more important things, don't you think?" I glanced at Grace, who was silently pouring water into glasses. She didn't say a word, but the faint tightening of her lips told me everything. The second woman, Isabella. If Victoria was diamonds, Isabella was silk. She floated in with dark hair, red lips, and an aura that screamed danger. "Mr. Harrington," she purred, shaking my father's hand a little too long. During dinner, she leaned toward him constantly, ignoring me almost entirely. When she did address me, it was only to ask shallow questions. "So, Emily, do you shop in Paris, Milan?" I muttered something about preferring bookstores. She raised an eyebrow and smirked. Her gaze kept drifting back to my father, as if I were merely an obstacle between her and the prize. The third woman, Margaret. Margaret arrived in a sharp business suit, holding a leather folder. She was a banker, efficient and cold. "Mr. Harrington," she said, nodding curtly. Then she looked at me. "You must be Emily. I reviewed your father's company reports. Brilliant work on the last merger." I blinked. That was Dad, not me. "Oh, well, you'll learn," she said briskly, already turning back to him. At dinner, she discussed profit margins, stock growth, and international trade. It was like watching a boardroom meeting. She didn't ask me a single question about me, my interests, my studies, my life. I felt invisible. The fourth woman, Clarissa, was loud. She entered in a burst of feathers and laughter, her voice carrying through the hall like a trumpet. "Darling!" she cried, hugging me so tightly I nearly choked. She smelled of heavy perfume and champagne. At dinner, she told exaggerated stories of her social life,